can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thank you for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? As we're here for the first time, what brings you here?
To learn to practice being more intentional, being more focused, being more informed.
Yeah. It's hard, huh?
Well, if I could do it, I wouldn't be.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah. And you're stuck with me. I apologize in advance.
Also, it occurred to me that there's a reason that there's so many books on this subject, so many self-help books and things like that. So it can't be easy.
Right.
And going to a class, learning from other people that are on the same journey, trying to practice and skill, seemed like a better way of learning than trying to figure it out for myself.
Yeah, for sure. Well, glad you're here. Welcome. Yeah. What else? Couple hands.
Same.
Yeah. Same. There you go.
Inner peace.
Inner peace. Yeah. What else? First time here. Some more hand back there. Yeah.
Self-reflection, being more present, and everything that he said.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah, really, it isn't easy. I mean, it's one of the things I say all the time is, there was one Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, he lived 2,500 years ago. And ever since then, people have been trying to do the same thing that he apparently experienced and taught for 45 years. And endless books and teachings and, cultures and traditions and lineages. And everybody's still trying to get to that place of just being calm and steady and peaceful throughout their day. And it is not easy. So it's good you come in with that idea already, knowing it's not easy, because often people come in thinking like, well, I'll just do this stuff for 2 months and then all of a sudden everything will make sense. And I find, I've talked in a couple different kind of groups here recently about people's diligence with practice. And by diligence with practice, what I'm talking about is a daily dedicated meditation practice. It could be 5 minutes. Doesn't matter how long it is. It doesn't have to be 20 minutes. You don't need incense. You don't need bells and whistles. You don't need stuff. You just need a crazy, messed up mind, which most of us have if we've showed up here on a Saturday morning at 11 o'clock in beautiful San Diego. But we just lack very often the diligence to practice every single day. And a lot of people come to a place like this, Dharma Bum Temple, they do their yoga practice, they go to whatever meditation, spiritual thing once a week, twice a week, and they say, okay, they kind of check it off as something they've done, almost as if they're, getting a workout in. And the mind, I can't speak for anybody else, but my mind is a mess every single day. Every day my mind is a mess. That has never changed. That will never change. And that's why you do this. That's why I do this practice every day, right? The diligence, the effort is really important. The 6 paramitas translate to perfection. loosely, it's not about being perfect, but these practices of the Bodhisattva, these enlightened beings, is generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. And most of us, we have diligence, we have effort. Anyone ever watched a Netflix series for 10 hours straight and just not even gotten up to go pee? You know, that takes a lot of effort. That's a lot of diligence to finish like 2 seasons of White Lotus in, you know, a day and a half. That's a lot of focus and determination and effort. But do we put that same effort into taking care of our mind and our hearts? And quite honestly, most people, no, they don't. Right? I've been running this place every day for 18 years. I've been at this practice every day for 22 years. I got introduced to this practice 30 years ago. And it wasn't until it became an everyday practice of meditation that it actually began to make a difference. Otherwise, it's just something. People often spend more time talking about their Buddhist thing than they actually do doing it. I'm not even kidding, right? And if that kind of like struck you the wrong way or maybe made you feel a little funny, then yeah, good. It's supposed to. But people will spend so much time talking about their meditation practice or talking about their Buddhist practice or their Buddhist places or their yoga path or their spiritual stuff and judging everybody else who doesn't have one. People will spend more time doing that than actually just sitting down and doing the daily meditation practice. And when you begin to cultivate a daily meditation practice, then almost all of the questions that people ask in places like this are answered, but not from some book, not from somebody else, not from someone sitting up here pretending like they know what they're talking about, but from you, from the experience, the cultivation of wisdom and compassion, which is already within us. It does not come from anything outside of us. It comes from within. And the only way to get there is to sit. I mean, that's it. Yes, there's other things, you know, being of service, generosity, being kind, all that stuff. Sure. But you have to sit. And by sit, I mean meditation. Not doing other things and calling it meditation. Well, I use this as my meditation, or I use that. Yes, the Buddha said sitting, standing, walking, lying down. But very often, and I would caution those who say, well, this is my meditation practice. You know, I've yet to meet somebody who can actually wash dishes in the way Thich Nhat Hanh is describing washing dishes, right? Oh, mindfully wash a dish, mindfully drink tea. Really? Are we doing that? Are we training the mind to stay present, focus, and concentrate on one thing? Some people, yeah, maybe you can. I can't, right? Doesn't mean others can. But really dedicate and discipline yourself to have a daily practice if you want this to benefit. Brush your teeth once a week, twice a week, comb your hair once a week. Those of you who still have it. David, yes. Not at all, dude. I hear you. So those things, will brush your teeth or comb your hair every single day. Take care of the mind every day. What do most people say? I'm too what? Too busy. The same people who banged out White Lotus in a day and a half are too busy to take care of their mind every day. So this is your gentle reminder. Drop all the books, drop all the Buddhism, drop all the attachment to spirituality, drop all the teachers and the monks and the nuns and the gurus. Drop all of that completely and get quiet. That's the practice. That's where it begins, truly. So with that, I will start with the meditation practice. To those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Thank you for showing up. A couple things to tell you for those who may be sitting for the first time, or here for the first time with meditation. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Phones ring, people cough. This happens. If you have to cough, please don't choke yourself by trying to keep it in. Just cough naturally and then return to silence. If you're sick, then you can go home. But if you just have a cough, just cough. If anything, you just woke somebody up, so thank you very much for coughing. All right, please do not torture yourself just because you have to cough. Posture, you want to be comfortable. If you aren't pushing off, then it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, same thing. Just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders, hands are on the knees or lap, whatever's comfortable. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything from this practice. We're just going to sit and breathe. Starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important, the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize every feel now, if it's quiet, calm and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around you or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen and you react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's what we get every single day. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to things quietly, peacefully, still. Working on closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives, but with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And present moment, as we know, is often filled with conflict, chaos, difficulties, and challenges. This is what we get. This has always been there, and it will always be there. This practice is learning how to sit with life as it arises and respond from a place of loving kindness and compassion, not from a place of hatred and anger. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do in each moment. That's why, as I spoke about earlier, developing a daily meditation practice is the most important thing on this journey. Because it allows you to get to know the one thing that is causing all of the suffering in your life right now. And that's you. A lot of people aren't ready to face that because we want to point fingers and blame everything on everyone else. And that doesn't mean there aren't other people doing things that are not healthy and not helpful and not beneficial. But this practice isn't about what everybody else is doing. This practice is about what you're doing. And that's difficult. To me, this is simply holding up a mirror and looking back at what you think, what you say, and what you do, and how that impacts the world around you. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone outside of us, which is where we spend so much of our time, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. So much time complaining about the actions of others. This practice is setting that down and looking at what are you doing to contribute to the world around you. That's it. I've never seen this practice as something that solves things, doesn't fix things. I've seen it as simply an opportunity to get to know your own thoughts and how you move through the world. And so regardless of how much chaos is happening in your immediate life or life around you, you are at peace. The world being a mess doesn't mean that you can't be at peace. In fact, I hope everybody cultivates the ability to be at peace, because that'll make it a lot easier to create a kinder, gentler world. But if you allow the mess of the world to make you a mess, then that's a bigger mess. So, with that, I'll pause. For me, I always really prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And to those who are joining virtually, again, welcome, glad you're here. Feel free to say hello. If you have any questions, put them on the chat box here. I'll do my best to respond. And to Cinda, yes, happy Pride. Maybe you must be celebrating Pride today. I know it's Pride Month. We'll be walking in a couple weeks, marching. So happy Pride to you as well. Maybe you're marching today. Not sure where you are. I forget. I think you're East Coast. But anyways, so we'll open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. Go from there.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about ego and pride, not the kind of
The other pride.
the other kind, yeah.
Yeah.
And just some, I don't know, for Buddhist reflective strategies for working on how to like loosen them in their grip.
On you? We're talking about your ego, or you want me to fix everybody else's? You never know. Often people ask questions where they're so worried about others, but I'm glad. All right. So the question those who didn't hear it was to talk about, from a Buddhist perspective, ego and pride, as you said, not the good pride, but the pride that kind of, harms us. But also pride can help us as well. So I want to start initially, I think, by just sharing something that for me was a very personal part when I started Buddhist practice, where, I'm fully aware of, I was in no place to necessarily wanting to change it, but fully aware of my ego and my pride. Just like massive, right? And early on in Buddhist practice, I thought, well, I need to shatter and get rid of my ego and get rid of my pride. And thinking that those were bad things or wrong things or harmful things. That was my view when I first started really studying Buddhism. So I was like, I'm going to get rid of my ego. Look at me shattering my ego, right? That was the most egotistical thing I could imagine, Look at me with no ego. Isn't this great, right? So what I learned over the years was to kind of, instead of, and I'm not even necessarily saying you're coming from this place, but this was my experience with it early on. Instead of, for me as a practice, thinking that I needed to get rid of my ego or have no pride, I needed to get to know it, to watch it, to learn it, to see where it's helpful, to see where it's beneficial to self and others, to see where it's harmful to self and others. Because I think, and I'll talk about pride for a minute, I don't necessarily see in Buddhist practice anything being wrong with being proud of things. If we are attached to what we're proud of, and we don't understand the impermanence of what we're proud of, then we run the risk of kind of danger area right there. But practicing, learning to be loving and kind, these are wonderful things to be proud of. I find often people come into Buddhist practice very much having a very negative view of themselves and don't think so highly of themselves, and often putting themselves down. Anyone here have negative views of themselves and think they're not good enough? Right? So all of a sudden then we come across Buddhist practice and we often think, well, my pride. No, pride can be a good thing. Be proud of your journey. Be proud of how far you've come. Have you gone through hell and back in your life? Be proud of that. Be proud of the fact that you're sitting here at 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning with a million other things to do, because you want to be kinder and gentler and more at peace. So I'm not a big fan of just thinking pride as a blanket statement is a bad thing. Obviously, there are areas where pride can harm us. And that's where I bring up the teachings of attachment, right? We can have views that we're very proud of. I'm proud of having views that I think wisdom and compassion is a good way to live. I didn't always think that way. And now I'm proud of the fact that that's how I see myself living or attempting to live. But I also can attach to that thinking that that view is better. That's the view that I have. Ego is also really, you look at the Buddhist teachings on non-self. And so in brief, this idea of non-self, it doesn't mean we're not here. It doesn't mean we don't exist. It doesn't mean that, it just means that we're different from how we perceive ourselves to be, right? What's your name? Sorry.
Darcy.
Darcy. Do you have a story, Darcy, that you've been telling yourself about yourself your whole life?
Yes.
Yeah. Is that story true?
No, it's narrow.
It's narrow, and it's your perception of Darcy. So if 10 people who've known Darcy your whole life tell stories of Darcy, they're all going to tell different views and perceptions and experiences of you? Absolutely. So who's correct? This idea of non-self to me in practice says that other people have a view of me. It's just their perception. It's not ultimate truth. I have a view of me. That's just my perception. It's not ultimate truth. So from this place of non-self, we begin to recognize how the ego, how these attachments and cravings and desires to think that you ever had a point in your life where you thought you were the most important person in the world and everything revolves around you?
Yes.
Yes, good answer. Makes it a lot easier when you're honest about this. Some people actually say no to that, and then I have to talk about lying, and then it's a whole different. So very often we're coming from that place, that ego that says I, me, but non-self says I am just existing in this world, in this country, in this state, in this city, in this sangha, in this community, as one of millions of other people. And I am no more or less important than anyone else. I don't need to think I'm less important, and I don't need to think I'm more important. The ego says life is about me, and I am most important, and so I will defend myself, and I will prove myself, and I will argue with you, because I think I'm right. Again, attachment to views, the ignorance that says, have you ever been in an argument and thought you were wrong? That's kind of the nature of the argument, right? We often think we're right. So that ego attaches to our views. Thich Nhat Hanh, if you come across it, right, Thich Nhat Hanh says nirvana, freedom from suffering, is freedom from views. And he goes on to say that all views are wrong. Now, how's it feel to roam around all day telling yourself your views are wrong? That kind of sucks, because it shatters that ego. We've been building up this idea that there's me and my views and my perception, and I'm right and you're wrong. When I heard that teaching, I had a view, and my view was, I don't like that. And then for me, in my practice, I began to realize that it wasn't about my views being right or wrong, but that my views are just my perceptions of reality, and every other person is going to have their perception of reality. And it's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's about, can we drop the ego to listen to other people? Doesn't mean your views are going to go away or change. I have very strong views on certain things, and they're not changing. They're really not. But I'm also not going to refuse to listen to people just because their views are completely opposite of mine. I'm not going to hate them just because they're racist or sexist or whatever. They deserve as much love and compassion as anybody else, because their hatred and anger is coming from a place of suffering. People who are happy and peaceful truly don't torture people. They're suffering tremendously. Thich Nhat Hanh also talked about the monks in the Vietnam War. Their greatest fear was losing compassion for those who were torturing them. I'm not there, but it sure sounds nice. So those are my thoughts on ego and pride. Use them, understand them, see where they're helpful and where they're harmful. And if we're honest with ourselves, it's usually pretty easy to see where we're attached. What else?
I'm trying to wrap my mind around this term. I keep reading or hearing about equanimity.
Mm-hmm.
And is it related to mindfulness or Buddhism
Sure.
in general?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
So let me touch briefly on this mindfulness thing that you referenced. So in Western culture, John Kabat-Zinn He started MDSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction. Brilliant medical doctor, brought mindfulness into the Western world, started within the medical kind of profession, and has trickled out. And 100 years from now, this country will still owe, I believe, the movement of mindfulness and meditation, and ultimately Buddhism as well, to people like John Kabat-Zinn. Let me also say that Western people, and I think this is why he had a Zen master, from what I heard, challenged him and said, what is it you can do with your, his koan was, what is it you can do with your life that nobody else can do? And from that, he created MBSR, right? And the word mindfulness. Western people love the word mindfulness, right? I'm not talking about people sitting here at a Buddhist temple doing meditation, but many who come here, I'll say to people, do you do meditation? But no, I practice mindfulness, right? One of the core fundamental Buddhist teachings is mindfulness, right? Karma Lexi Somo is a Tibetan Buddhist nun for 40 plus years. She would say mindfulness without, and I'll get back to equanimity, but this is important since you mentioned mindfulness. Mindfulness without moral, ethical conduct behavior doesn't get you so far. You could mindfully rob a bank, she said. You could mindfully murder someone, right? Mindfulness is one piece of an awareness, but what are we aware of, right? You have the Eightfold Path in Buddhist teachings, right? Four Noble Truths, suffering, the cause of suffering, the ending of suffering, and the path. On the path, you have correct views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration, or meditation. Where are those on the list that I just rattled off at the end? So this practice does not begin with mindfulness. It begins with moral, ethical conduct and behavior, and how we see the ignorance within ourselves and the attachments and cravings within ourselves. That's where it starts, right? Which I understand completely contradicts everything I said 44 minutes ago that said you must start with meditation practice, which is why you should never listen to anything I say. Now, back to your question on equanimity. So mindfulness is important, but this idea of equanimity, right? In Buddhism, there's what's called the four Brahma Viharas, the four foundations of mindfulness: loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. This idea of equanimity to me is a lot of kind of Buddhist metaphors, examples of it, but think of, you have the ocean, and you throw a couple little stones in the ocean. You get some 2-foot waves crashing in. What are those 2-foot waves going to do to the stones? Throw them everywhere. Play along here, right? Can you picture that?
Okay.
So there you go. All right.
Yeah.
So they'll throw them around, right? Now all of a sudden you got this like 100-foot boulder sitting there with a 2-foot wave. Is it going to do anything to it? No. Doesn't impact it at all, right? Be the boulder. To where the waves are always going to crash on you. Some of them are small, some of them are large. Some people might cut you off in traffic and make your latte the wrong way, and some people might harm you very deeply with their words or actions. Some people will do little things to trigger you, and some people will do not so little things. Either way, the practice of equanimity is to be steady. I think of it as just steady, calm, still, not disturbed at all by anyone or anything. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a way to achieve that, or is that something that just happens?
Oh, you want to actually do that?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it starts with sitting and breathing. When you sit and breathe, do you have lots of thoughts? Are your thoughts pleasant, some of them? Every once in a while? Are they unpleasant more often? And are they neutral? The Buddha said pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. When you sit in meditation, whether it's like today, for 20 minutes we sat and did a meditation practice, you had a million thoughts, right? Some pleasant, some unpleasant, some neutral. What did you do during the 20 minutes of sitting with your thoughts?
Tried to refocus back to my breath.
Understood. Physically, what did you do? Did you go anywhere? No. Did you yell at anyone? Did you scream? Did you punch? Did you kick? Did you leave? Did you turn the TV on? Did you turn to your phone? Did you turn to an addiction? Did you turn to an escape? No, you just sat with your mess.
Yeah.
That's how you begin. Anything that happens, those waves, those are just thoughts. Our mind must see the wave for the wave to exist, or it does not exist. Your latte made the wrong way, the traffic and everything globally that you don't like, you only don't like it because you see it and you judge it, just like your thoughts. and you sat with your thoughts for 20 minutes, congratulations. When the world out there comes crashing down on you, you can also just sit with it and observe it. This is like shocking to most people, but every harmful, painful, negative thought that we have doesn't have to elicit a response. We can actually just sit with it, just like you just did. You just proved for 20 minutes that you can do it. So that's the practice of cultivating equanimity. There's a comment here from Cinda. I used to think meditation meant I had to change my thoughts. I thought in recent months it might be more about becoming friends with my thoughts, enjoying the working of my own mind. Yeah, I think that's a very healthy way to approach meditation. Very often people do come into this thinking that like they have to change their thoughts. Your thoughts over time, the more you practice compassion, loving kindness, understanding, forgiveness, all these kind of, fun little buzzwords, the more you practice that, your thoughts ultimately will slowly change. But this isn't, to me, about early on changing your thoughts. It's about getting to know them and, as you say, becoming friends with them. So, yeah.
Question about the Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
In that statue is emaciated, it went probably too far, but did you have to go that far to get to the point? In this, for example, you mentioned a few times that, you wish if you didn't get to involve your money, you could have started a lot of temples. But then you have to do
Thanks for reminding me.
Well, no, but then you have to get to all of that to get to the point to start this temple. So is it possible to not really go into that path to really make that kind of progress?
Sure. Everybody is at different levels of extremes. For me personally, yeah, I had to, or what I would, but I've always been very extreme. I do not share that as a healthy practice. I do not suggest people just drop out and leave their lives and, go to the other side of the world and lock themselves in a monastery. I don't recommend that for most people. For me, I had to do it. But I've never suggested or recommended that. In fact, looking back on it, I realized that was just as much of an escape as anything else was. Right? To the emaciated Buddha statue, and for me, that's why it's always been our Buddha statue from day one, is that for those who don't know the story, emaciated Buddha, the skinny one behind me, a lot of people don't realize that is the Buddha, but prior to his awakening, Siddhartha Gautama, when he was the prince. The very short story is 29 years old, he's raised as a prince, 29 years old, he leaves home, roams the base of the Himalayan mountains for 6 years, and at 35 years old, sits down and says, I'm not leaving until I figure out why we suffer. And so during this journey, those 6 years, he met up with 5 other guys, and they thought in India at the time that kind of this yogi ascetic path was the way to overcome suffering. And they also thought that overcoming their attachment to the physical body was a way to overcome suffering. So it said that they starved themselves nearly to death. They lived on 1 grain of rice a day, and he was so emaciated that you could take your fingers in front and back, and then your fingers would actually touch, right? So they were living this completely extreme way. They came to a river. A woman offered them some food, like some porridge, and everybody was like, no, we don't eat, right? And Siddhartha was like, something to the effect of, well, I'm hungry, right? And so he said, I'm going to take this bowl, I'm going to put it in the stream. And if the bowl goes against the stream, I'm going to eat. The bowl went against the stream. He started to eat. Everybody else was like, you sellout, you traitor, you food eater. The other 5 guys left him. But he regained his balance. This is where we introduce the teachings of the middle path, and I'll come back to this. So then he goes on, sits under the Bodhi tree for 21 days, just contemplating the nature of his mind. And then those 5 guys, the exit sign back there on the tapestry above it, those 5 guys came back and they saw him sitting under the tree, and they said, there's Siddhartha, let's go sit with him. He looks like he's figured something out. They sit down, he gives it's called the first turning of the Dharma wheel, the Four Noble Truths. They taught at Deer Park. They say all the Buddhist teachings are embodied in the Four Noble Truths. That's it. Everybody else is just making stuff up. The Four Noble Truths, that is the teachings, right? They say the Buddha taught the same thing 80,000 different ways, but all coming from the Four Noble Truths. So those 5 guys came back, he taught to them, and they said, you have awakened, we will call you the Buddha. The Buddha just means the awakened one, right? So then he teaches for 45 years and he dies. Coming back to the statue, to me, when we opened the Dharma Bums, it was important to pick this statue because we weren't trying to become Buddhas. We weren't these enlightened beings. We were physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally near death. And so we sat with him as kind of like, yo, if this dude could figure it out, so could we. But it's a journey. To your question, did he have to go to that extreme? To me, it's not about whether he had to or anyone had to. That's the extreme that he went to.
Right.
And I'm not suggesting that anybody goes to that extreme, but I am suggesting that we explore, like my silly examples always of how many shirts do you have, how many shoes do you have, right? To explore, where is your middle path? Where are you out of balance, right? For you, as we all know, we share very candidly and openly, and that's why I love you so much, you are like all in. You are like, you know, if Buddhism was the craziest cult in the world and I told you to drink juice, you would drink it.
I do.
You do, exactly.
Raw foods and extreme with diet.
Right.
Yeah.
And that can be very dangerous.
Yes, I agree.
So the real question is not what did I do, not what did Siddhartha do, not what does anybody else do, what are you doing? And if you recognize it's unhealthy, there's a lot of weird stuff in Buddhism. Really. Meaning a lot of people have taken Buddhism and made it really weird and messed with it. It's simple. Think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds. So many cultures, religions, and places have just warped that message and made it really dangerous and toxic and unhealthy. When we are already used to consuming things that make things dangerous and toxic and unhealthy. So if you recognize that it's unhealthy for you, then you got to go back to church.
But if I recognize I'm extreme in one area, how do I get past the fear of getting back to where, because getting back to where the center, you're acknowledging the other side, basically the other extreme. So how to get past the fear of leaving
Sure.
the extreme, getting back to it, because there's a lot of fear sometimes that pushes me in the
Sure.
extreme.
I think it starts with recognizing that the teachings of the Buddha are not better than anything else.
Mhm.
You are way too attached to Buddhist teachings. You think they are the greatest thing in the world. He was just some dude. It's just a way. Pretty sure everything Jesus said was beautiful also. Right?
When people twist.
No,
it.
forget about what
Yeah.
people do. What do you do? See how quickly you're okay with Buddhism, but as soon as I mentioned Jesus, you went to people. People twist it. I'm not talking about what people do to it. What do you do to it? If you line up the teachings of the Buddha and the teachings of Jesus,
They're saying the same thing.
so what's the problem? Your problem, your question is about the problem you're having with observing some other path in some other way as wrong or bad. The real question is, why are you perceiving Buddhism to be the greatest thing in the world? That's dangerous. That's unhealthy and toxic, because then it introduces what I always talk about of Buddhist arrogance, where you start judging other people. Well, I'm Buddhist, so I'm better than you. Or I'm this type of, like, people come in all the time, like, what type of Buddhism are you? I'm like the good kind? I don't know. You know, like, people get so wrapped up in, like, are you Zen? Are you Theravada? Are you Vajrayana? Like, drop all that crap. Think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds. That's it. Sit with your breath, recognize your mind is a mess, and be kind to yourself and others. Drop the labels of Buddhism and Buddhists and Zen and Theravada and Vajrayana and all these other things, and just practice loving kindness for yourself, towards yourself and towards others. That is all. That's it. The moment you start thinking that this is better than something else, then that, you know, kind of coming back to that pride and that ego thing, then you're all wrapped up in your Buddhism. Like, shatter Buddhism as well. It's just a construct some dude made up. Yeah. What else? We'll do one more before we close. Yeah.
So if I'm thinking good thoughts, working on thinking good thoughts, and saying kind words and doing kind things, and I'm starting to meditate,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not like learning all about Buddhism,
Mm-hmm.
is there a concern with that?
No. Congratulations. You know how many hours you saved reading and Googling and looking at stupid Buddhist
That's lazy,
memes?
but okay.
Yeah. No. Wait, we'll say that last part
I
again?
just chalked it up to being lazy, but okay.
Right. So here's the thing. You were almost off the hook until you said the last part about lazy. The question for those who didn't hear it was, if you're working on thinking good thoughts, speaking good words, doing good deeds, and you're working on a daily meditation practice, but you're not like studying Buddhism, like, are you good? So I think it's, I don't want to necessarily, and then you added something about being lazy. I think it's important to understand that there are really beautiful things that the Buddha taught that can trigger things in us. And so we can say, I'm working on thinking good thoughts, speaking good words, and doing good deeds. Who am I, whose view and perception am I using to validate what I perceive as good? My own. That's a little dangerous. So this is where, to me, Buddhism, it gets overlooked, and I'll close with this thought. Buddhism is not a faith-based religion, right? He was a person, he lived, he died. So we're not having faith in him, as I always say, thinking the Buddha's going to show up and save you, he died, right? But faith in the practice, faith in the teachings, to me, as a practitioner, is really important. So if I just tell myself, I'm going to think good thoughts, speak good words, and do good deeds, you ever really good at convincing yourself you're right? Right? We can often trick ourselves into justifying or validating what we're doing. And for me, I really like to know, what did the Buddha specifically say? Well, I'll put it this way, 1,000% convinced he was a wiser, more understanding, more compassionate person than I will ever even remotely come close to. So it's like having a really good friend that's telling you you're being an idiot in the gentlest way. They're calling you on your stuff, right? And so I look at Buddhist teachings kind of like that, like a really good friend who's calling me on my nonsense, who's saying, no, that's really kind of all about you. And so that's where I look at, I think, learning about what he taught in a little more depth, looking at the teachings even from a modern day of Dalai Lamas and Thich Nhat Hanh's and Pema Chodron's. All they're doing is taking what the Buddha said and spinning it in their own way that makes sense. But there's reasons millions of people read that stuff, because it might trigger something in you. So you're kind of off the hook, But I think it does help to explore what else, because we can also kind of just say, well, I'm good, I'm working on this, but maybe there's more stuff going on. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Pam during her time of suffering, and to Mark and his family who suffer at this time. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. All right, a few quick announcements before y'all head out. Thank you for being here. My name is Jeff. We opened up the Dharma Bum Temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist teaching to those who show up, those of us who lead. We're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just struggling practitioners, no different than anybody else. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms no different than, or that hopefully resonate with those who show up. Every night we have different practices going on, people leading from a different Buddhist tradition. Every Thursday, 4:30, we have a food redistribution program. We prepare gourmet vegetarian meals, also known as peanut butter and jelly, and we feed people who sleep on the street. So anytime you think your life sucks and you kind of lack gratitude for everything you have, feed people sleeping on a sidewalk, and it tends to put things into perspective. Quite a large recovery community, so anyone with addiction, drugs, alcohol, or anything for that matter, classes almost every day with regards to tying Buddhism and recovery together. A couple things out of the ordinary. just schedule-wise, Monday night, this coming Monday, many of you know Sozui, who's the Zen priest up at Hidden Valley Zen Center. She'll be here as a guest speaker. She used to come down once every couple months. It's been a while since we've had her here, but so she'll be coming down Monday night at 7. If you've never sat with her, she's awesome. Super gentle and sweet, and just like no nonsense hardcore. So, if you like that, definitely show up. If you don't like that, then definitely show up. So she'll be here Monday night at 7. And then also the Pride Parade, we are marching again Saturday, July 19th. There's a little flyer out on the wall there above the shoe rack. Also go to the website, top right corner, it says Pride Parade 2025. Takes you 2 minutes if you want to sign up. That way we have a count of how many are going. But we'll be marching as a temple. That's Saturday morning at 10 a.m. And then Monday morning, we have sworn for eternity that we will help clean up Balboa Park Monday morning after the Pride Festival. So if you want to help clean up, we'll do 2 shifts from 7 to noon and then noon to 5. Same spot on the website, you can go there. But Monday, the park is a mess and they really struggle getting people to help clean it up. So it's just a beautiful service. And I forgot to mention last week, thank you all to everybody 2 weeks ago who helped dig. Y'all did incredible. We didn't break anything, which is phenomenal. We didn't do any damage, which is phenomenal. And Evan and his crew are starting on the Zen Garden this week. So we have taken it far enough. They will take over from here. But I forgot to mention last week, I just want to thank everybody for, digging out there all day in the sun. It was a fun time. I don't know if it was fun, but it was a fun time. So thank you all. Be well. Buddha for you is downstairs. If you need anything, we'll see you soon. Hi, Ben. Keegan, Mike, and Craig. How you guys doing?